Hello, my name is Christopher Renstrom. I'm the creator of rulingplanets.com and Christopher Renstrom Astrology. And this time, I wanted to talk to you about Uranus at the bendings on June 12th. What are the bendings? The bendings refer to that midpoint place between the north and south lunar nodes in astrology. Now, what I want you to do for a moment is to imagine a serpent that surrounds the globe. The head of that serpent is called the caput draconis, which means dragon's head, and that is known as the north node in astrology. And the dragon has a tail. That's called cauda draconis, which means the tail of the dragon, and that has always been associated with the south node in astrology. Now, you can think of this serpent that surrounds the globe as being the ecliptic. So, what's the ecliptic? The ecliptic is the path that the sun, moon, and planets follow across the sky. For instance, in the daytime, if you look up in the sky and you see the sun, you'll notice that the sun isn't sort of veering suddenly to the right or the left or doing curlicues in the sky. The sun is following one path, one consistent path across the daytime sky. And at night, after the sun is set, the moon and the planets will also follow that same path across the sky. And that path across the sky is called the ecliptic. Now, the constellations on the ecliptic, those constellations are known as the signs of the zodiac. Now, strictly speaking, the moon doesn't really follow this same path across the sky. I mean, it does, but oftentimes the moon's a little above the path or it's a little below the path. You can kind of think of it as a bouncing ball in a way. Now, the ecliptic, the path that the sun follows across the sky, got its name because the ancients saw that solar eclipses only happened when the moon actually crossed the ecliptic and blocked the sun's light. This was likened in ancient times to a dragon swallowing the sun. That was associated with the solar eclipse, or swallowing the moon, which was associated to the lunar eclipse. Planets at the bendings, which is the midpoint between the north and south nodes, square the two lunar nodes. This creates a crossroads where you must choose between one or the other. The north node means you're moving forward, and the south node means you're moving back. Planets at the south bending are connected to the south node, whereas planets at the north bending are connected to the north node. To find which bending the planet occupies in the chart, start with the north node and move clockwise around the wheel. If a planet is at the opening square, that is 90 degrees moving clockwise away from the north node, then it is at the south bending. If a planet is at the closing square, that is 270 degrees moving clockwise away from the north node, then it is at the north bending. Uranus is at 2 Gemini, so it is 270 degrees moving clockwise away from the north node, which happens to be in Pisces. So Uranus is at the north bending. So let's go ahead and talk about what Uranus at the bendings means for each of the 12 zodiac signs. If you're born under Aries or you have Aries rising, Uranus at the bendings is going to be very helpful to you. On January 11th, 2025, the North Node first entered the zodiac sign of Pisces. Now, that can be a little bit of a difficult energy for you to navigate, and that's because Pisces sits right next to you in the zodiacal circle. There are certain things that you have in common with Pisces and certain things in which you really don't get about Pisces at all. And the North Node in this blind spot would have stimulated all of that energy. It would have made you feel at times like you could sort of see the way clear, and then all of a sudden, like you couldn't see the way clear at all. Perhaps the best way of describing this would have been this feeling that you were being called forward into your life, but you really didn't have a clear idea of where you were going, how things were going to turn out, where you were even going to land. Pisces is a different energy than Aries is. Aries is a very straightforward energy. It wants a goal, it wants a task, it will set its sights on a challenge, passing some kind of test, and it will overcome, it will win, it will triumph. These are the things that people born under Aries or who have Aries rising really understand. It's like, here's this obstacle in my path and I have to get around it, or here's this battle I have to fight and I have to win it, or here's this challenge I'm facing and I have to master it. A North Node in Pisces doesn't really have that same outlook on life. Pisces has a tendency to be more wandering in its wondering. Pisces doesn't really feel like there's this goal it has to reach or this accomplishment that it has to achieve. Pisces is more involved with the mystery of life and the purpose of life, an understanding of life and the way that life moves and works in a way that most people don't really get, that most people don't even think about because they're locked into their lifestyle. They're locked into their habits, their routines. They're locked into a certain way of looking at the world based on maybe their environment, their culture, or maybe even their ambitions, maybe where they even want to go. Pisces lets go of all of these things. Pisces likes to feel that it's adrift in the world. And by being adrift, it's being true to its watery nature. It's following the current that underlies all of our actions and is drawn to the things in life that matter, to certain points in life that are going to resonate on a very deep and a profound level. This is the way that Pisces energy tends to look at moving forward in life. It's drawn more to the mystery of life or to the wonder of life or the contemplation of life than it is to the actual duties and things that need to be done. So since January of 2025, you might have felt to some degree that things weren't moving in the way that you wanted them to move in your life, that maybe, I don't know, the obstacles didn't seem worth going up against. The challenges suddenly felt rather disingenuous, or that the trials and tribulations that you were facing were kind of, I don't know, irrelevant in some sort of way. In other words, the things that used to really get you going, what's the next challenge? What's the next obstacle? What's the next test? Didn't do it for you anymore. They maybe lost their appeal or their oomph, or as I said just a moment ago, they might have lost their relevance. And so something invisible was tugging at you, something invisible and very hard to articulate was saying to you, it's time to change. It's time to leave what's familiar in your life and go on to something more. Now, the idea of leaving what's familiar in your life, being an Aries or an Aries rising, you don't really have a problem with that. You're not really bound to the things that hold you in place. You will respond to something that you feel really motivates you in life or even calls to you in life. And so the idea of leaving what's familiar wasn't going to be much of a problem. Your problem would have been in your inability to articulate it or to figure out what it was. And so what might have been happening during this time is that you might have experienced certain setbacks or certain difficulties, certain things that made doing what you did in your life more difficult. And instead of trying to master them, which is a typical Aries response, you might have just been like, maybe this has outlived its time. Maybe this obstacle isn't something for me to meet, but maybe this obstacle is so repetitive or it's the same thing that I'm tired of facing this obstacle again. I want something new. I want something different, which might have been like shocking for you as an Aries to say. What's going to be really nice about this Uranus at the bendings is that it's going to allow you to see the split between the before and the after. The before is everything that you were doing in your life that was bringing you some kind of fulfillment, but somehow things had changed since January of 2025, and it wasn't doing for you the things that it used to be doing. And then there was this invisible sense of there being something more. Well, what's going to happen is that the Uranus at the bendings is going to expose that the things that used to do it for you no longer do it for you, and that you need to move towards, because that's what a North Node is, you need to move towards those Piscean experiences that I just described. Now, again, that might leave you a little bit like, well, I'm not convinced that this is the way to go. I'm not convinced that there's anything here for me. And this is where you need to lead with a side of yourself that maybe you're not that accustomed to leading with. Aries is a very strong-willed sign, and Aries is a zodiac sign that doesn't take well to weaknesses or anything that shows a kind of fallibility or even a vulnerability. What's going on during this period of time is that you might be really experiencing for yourself vulnerability in your life, a weakness in your life, that the old life doesn't make any sense anymore, and that the things that you want in your new life aren't necessarily aspirations or ambitions, but they might have something to do with needs. And needs, as we all know, is practically a swear word for an Aries or an Aries rising. But this is a period of time for you to really think about what you need more than what you want. What do you need in your life? Is it more intimacy? Is it more emotional fulfillment? Is it more comfort? These are the things that people born under Aries or Aries rising will discard. It's so beneath them. It's not Aries like, this need for comfort or reassurance or support. Those are so namby-pamby, clingy, the things that Aries doesn't like. But what I think the North Node in Pisces is bringing up for you is that you need these things. You need these things to move forward in your life. And that as you address your vulnerabilities, as you address your weaknesses, not as things that you need to overcome or master, but as things that are leading the way, that are things that are showing a deficiency in your life. Like if you're feeling vulnerable, then you may not be feeling supported or comforted. Or if you're feeling weak, you may have overworked a muscle and ignored other aspects of your personality, like maybe your emotional life or need for security. Only you can really have the answers to what you feel you need in your life. But this is what Uranus is here to do at the bendings. It's by opening yourself up to those parts of yourself that you don't naturally spend much time with, opening yourself up to that, realizing the need that you have for these things. This is what's going to show you the way forward in your life, so that as you move forward in your life, it's more about fulfilling those needs. It's more about doing things for those parts of yourself, the needy, the clingy, the wandering parts of yourself, addressing those aspects of yourself, fulfilling those parts of your personality. And what that's going to do is make you a more holistic, a fuller, and a more profound person. If you're born under Taurus, or you have Taurus rising, Uranus at the bendings is going to be a bit of a surprise for you. And that makes a lot of sense, because Uranus is the planet of revolution and change. Now, as a Taurus, you're pretty familiar with Uranus, the planet of revolution and change, because it's been bringing nothing but upheaval in your life since 2018. But it hasn't just been one upheaval after the next in your life since 2018. These upheavals have actually gotten you to question the things that matter in your life, to rethink your approaches to things, to evolve, to adapt, and to change. Adapt and change, two words that aren't often used when we talk about people born under Taurus or who have Taurus rising. But nevertheless, you've learned a lot about resilience, resourcefulness, inventiveness, and spontaneity. Now, in January 2025, the North Node moved into the zodiac sign of Pisces. The North Node always shows where we are going in our lives, whereas the South Node shows where we have been. So basically, with the South Node, you're leaving that energy to go and follow the North Node energy. North Node energy talks about those things that lie just a little bit outside your comfort zone. They're the things that you want or aspire to, or maybe even things that you know are good for you, but they're not something that you would arrive at through habit or a routine approach or things that you would do typically in your day to day life. So, a North Node energy sort of asks you to raise your sights and to reach just a bit further in order to follow the way that it wants you to go. Now, what's fortunate for you and has been fortunate for you is that the North Node in January 2025, it entered the zodiac sign of Pisces. The North Node forms a natural sextile to your own sign, Taurus. So, Pisces, being a water sign, forms a sextile to Taurus, which is an earth sign. So, this idea of really reaching outside your comfort zone, it wasn't really that much of a reach or not something that you would have to exert or force yourself to do. It's something that would have occurred to you more as like, oh, that's a nice idea, or that's something that I could see myself doing. So it's something that you could visualize. It's something that even has an appeal. So what's going on here with the North Node in Pisces is that it's sort of talking to you about your higher purpose in life. Now, we often talk about purpose and higher purpose in life and these sorts of things, but there are certain zodiac signs that really address those issues of higher purpose in life. One of them is Sagittarius, and the other one is Pisces. And something that you might have noticed right off the bat is that both Sagittarius and Pisces are ruled by Jupiter, the planet of belief. Jupiter, the planet of one's own higher purpose. But higher purpose, as is understood in Pisces, is different than how it's understood in Sagittarius. A higher purpose in Sagittarius is something that you discover, you happen upon it. Maybe even it calls out to you from out of nowhere. You're like, that's my higher purpose. It's calling. I must answer it. That would be more a Sagittarian experience of higher purpose. A higher purpose, as it appears in the zodiac sign of Pisces, can come across perhaps more like a dissatisfaction, that the things in your life aren't doing it for you anymore, that there's a kind of feeling of an emptiness, or maybe even of yourself as being invisible in your own life. Now, as a Taurus or Taurus rising, you might often define yourself or even present yourself as a very reliable person. And people may see you as reliable. And so they may ask for things, or they may beseech you to provide or to protect. They may appear in your life, maybe even as obligations and responsibilities. And these may be obligations and responsibilities that you're very happy about fulfilling, but there might be a part of you that's asking, what am I getting out of this? Like, I'm making the sacrifice to raise the kids, and I hope that they go to college or better themselves one day, but actually, what am I getting out of this? Or I'm showing up at work and I'm doing my job, but what am I getting out of this? These might be things that you grumble about vocally in your day to day life, or they might be things that you keep to yourself. But this idea of what am I getting out of this would have been a very strong idea with you since January of last year. And you might have found that even if you did things to fulfill yourself, like I worked hard, so now I'm going to play even harder, or I went to the gym and now I'm going to treat myself to a great big dessert after dinner, things that you reward yourself, cravings that get satisfied or pleasures that you get to enjoy. Again, there might have been this feeling of emptiness about it, that it just wasn't fulfilling you, that you were still craving something, even though your belly was full. And that's the Pisces part of this equation. And that's how the North Node appears here in this particular axis. What you might have really felt is that I don't feel like there's a profundity to my life. I mean, I understand that life is profound, like it is mysterious, but I don't feel like I'm living that in my day-to-day life. And I want that. I want more of that. So this might have led you to spiritual reading or spiritual pursuits, something to give you a sense of being connected to something that's higher and greater and better than yourself. And these might have, again, given you some sense of a feeling of fulfillment, some sense of meaning and direction, but it didn't really quite do it. It didn't really quite deliver. Maybe it felt more like it was a pastime rather than something that was truly moving you. We can commit ourselves to all sorts of paths, but what it's really about in the end is what's moving us, what's resonating with us. And so this is something that your sun would have understood about the North Node, but it might not have felt like it could actually pursue, that circumstances wouldn't allow you to do this. So, what is Uranus at the bendings going to do? Uranus and the bendings might bring some sort of revolutionary or revelatory experience to you regarding finances. Now, okay, don't get anxious. I know that it might be too soon to bring up the idea of Uranus and finances with you, especially after what you've gone through over the past few years. But I think what's happening here is going to be more along the lines of you realizing, perhaps, that what you're doing for a living isn't connected to what you really want to be doing for a living. In other words, you might be working in a profession that is the paycheck, it's bringing stability and security, but it's robbing you of your time. It's robbing you of your essence. It's robbing you of your soul. And that maybe you want to take the skills and abilities that you have honed in your present job or profession and apply them to something that you feel would be more resonant to you, that would speak more to you. One example that comes to mind is I'm thinking of this financier. This is a number of years back who would hang out with his buddies and talk about all the money that they had made. And he had more money than he knew what to do with. And he was just spending things on recreation or whatever. And then one day he woke up, he was struck by a bolt out of the blue. And he said, what I'm doing is a waste of time. I mean, not only is it a waste of money, but it's a waste of time and it's a waste of me. And so he quit his Wall Street job and he decided to focus on areas of the city which were like food deserts, areas of the city that didn't have proper food and nutrition for the people who lived in those neighborhoods. And what he wanted to do was to go into those neighborhoods and set up food co-ops to feed people in a healthy manner and to teach people how to eat better than they were eating, but not even really necessarily that. I mean, people can want to eat better, but maybe they can't afford it. So he went and set up co-ops in these areas that really benefited the people living in those neighborhoods. That spoke to his soul. That spoke to his sense of purpose. So that might be an example. Another one might be what I would call the you can't take it with you. You might have accrued enough money or built up enough of a financial portfolio that you've become enslaved to it. And it's all about putting more money away, but not using money in your life in a fulfilling capacity or to do the things that you want to do. And maybe what you want to do is more spiritual than it is recreational. Another idea might be the idea of you becoming a patron, or you becoming a mentor, or you becoming someone who shares the wealth of your experience with people who are younger than you or less fortunate than you. So what this could be is even the idea of giving back. But what I think is going on here is that for a period of time, the cart has been before the horse. In other words, finances, like financial worries and responsibilities and obligations, have been in front of the horse. They've been in front of you. And now it's time to put you in front of that cart. And that is what I think that Uranus at the bendings is all about. It's telling you now is the time to live the life that you want to live. Now is the time to be that person that you want to be. But moreover, you can be a person that gives to others. You can be a person who protects and helps others. This could have a very powerful and deep resonance for you. And this is something that I think that Uranus at the bendings is showing you how you can do in your life now. If you're born under Gemini, or you have Gemini rising, Uranus at the bendings is going to be an absolutely exciting time for you. All of a sudden, you can go wherever you want to go. You can make up the rules that you want to live by. All of a sudden, the blinders have fallen away, and you can see for miles and miles and miles, just like the song says. Uranus in your own zodiac sign has made you feel liberated. It's made you feel energized. It's making you feel dynamic. It's making you feel like you can go and do the things that you've always wanted to do. This might even bring with it a feeling of exceptionalism, that the rules don't apply to you, that you can make or bend the rules however you please. And this is good insofar as it liberating you in the sense of you living the life that you want to live, or liberating those wonderful faculties of yours, those experimental, those inventive, those spontaneous faculties of yours. I mean, certainly you're going to feel like your thinking is more accelerated, that things are coming much more quickly to you than they have before. What may also be going on during this period of time is that you may feel like you're finally getting rid of these heavy burdens that have been on your shoulders, that all those years that you spent paying your dues or slogging through the rough times, all of that has changed right now. It's kind of like having to ride a bike up a really steep hill. And now that you're at the top of the hill, you can see that you're going to go downhill and that it's not going to be the exertion that you've had to apply before, that you can speed along, that you can get to the places where you need to get quickly and effortlessly. And this is a good thing. So Uranus takes that feeling of anything is possible in your life and it electrifies it in your day-to-day experience now. Now, the thing that has been occupying you for at least a year since the time that the North Node entered the zodiac sign of Pisces in January of 2025 is basically, what do I want to do with my life? It's your career. It's that sense of accomplishment, that sense of achieving a higher status, of completing things, of building on things, and being a success in your own right. And this is something that has gone in and out for you, particularly over the past year. It might have felt like you were on the path to getting the things that you wanted, and then all of a sudden something came out of left field and it threw things askew, and you were thrown off track and you didn't see how you were going to make your way back to the path. And maybe that path was even wiped out entirely. But what happened is that you discovered a new path to maybe the same success that you were looking at, or a new path to something else, to success in another area or a field of interest in your life. So there's been this kind of feeling that the winds have changed the direction or the course of where you're going. And being a Gemini, part of you would have been into that. It's kind of like, okay, this is where we're going right now. I mean, Gemini is very spontaneous. That's one of the wonderful things about the sign. But even if you were playing the long game, you would have experienced over the year some sort of unexpected breakthroughs, something that you might have felt was leading you far away from the things that you wanted, but somehow miraculously wound up depositing you at the door of where you wanted to go. So this has been something that's been going on in your life since about January of 2025. And right now, you could probably even see these accomplishments coming within reach. Maybe you've worked at this for months. Maybe you've worked for this for years. You can suddenly see a prize within reach, that I'm going to have this. And not only I'm going to have this, but you can see what life's going to be like now that you do have this. Okay, so this can be a wonderful time or feeling of fulfillment and accomplishment in your life. But what we have to remember here is that Uranus is at the bendings. It's choosing between the North Node and the South Node. And because of the bending that it's at, it's going to choose the North Node. It's going to choose moving forward, up, and out. This is the direction that you want to go in your life right now. But it's still bringing along with it a lot of the South Node energy. Okay, I referred to the South Node energy before as looking back or moving backwards in some way. Another way to think of the South Node energy is bringing along the baggage. This comes from how nodes are worked with in evolutionary astrology, for instance. In evolutionary astrology, the lunar nodes are often associated with past lives, reincarnation, things that you did in your past life that have created the lessons you need to learn in this one, or the curriculum you need to study in your present incarnation. So the idea of a past life, I'm just talking about the idea of a past life here, basically is all these lives that you've lived previously in which basically things didn't turn out well. Maybe you made bad mistakes or you suffered horrible things or choices led you into dreadful situations and you've come back again to work all of that out. Now, a day-to-day way of looking at this might be what we often will refer to as our psychological baggage. It's the things that have occurred earlier in our life that have created regret, or they've calcified into angers and resentments, or they've even come to define our behavior. Our behavior might have been defined by choices that were made that wound up disasters, or choices that weren't made that wound up being disasters. This baggage of accrued experience that we don't really see as being positive or constructive, and that might even have cost us or gotten in our way. And so when you're working with this idea of really standing at a midpoint between the North Node and the South Node, what's being asked of you is to let go of what is in the past so that you can move towards the future. Now, that sounds like it's a really easy choice. Like, oh, I'll just let go of what's in the past and move to the future. But we can carry those grievances. Those grievances might even have described our behavior. They might even have shaped our priorities. Maybe, let's say, you were competitive with a sibling who did really well, who beat you out at different contests at school or growing up and always got the things that they wanted. And now maybe you're at a time in your life in which you're realizing the success and you've beat out the sibling and you're getting the things that you wanted and this is feeling great. Well, what if the idea is that you getting the things that you wanted, that you being successful in your life are tied to that old rivalry with the sibling? What if that rivalry has to be remembered? It has to be invoked over and over again, and that you wouldn't be a success if you didn't have this rivalry with the sibling or this resentment towards a sibling or this feeling that you were overlooked by your parents. Okay, so that's what I mean by past behavior or past situations can shape our values and the way that we look at things. So letting go of that past can be very hard. It can be very challenging. What if it means coming clean? What if it means telling your sibling that the only reason you did this is because you felt competitive and wanted to beat them out? I mean, and maybe you're saying that to a sibling that you're close to right now. I mean, that's not the nicest thing to bring up. So what this is about is really taking care of that old business, letting go of that old business. That's a lot of what people talk about when they say that South Node energy is about letting go of things. And so in order to move forward into the things that you really want, you have to let go of past grudges or behaviors or resentments. And that might be a little bit more difficult for you, a little bit more arduous for you than you think. A lot of times we define ourselves by our history. But the question that you want to be asking during this period of time is, are you repeating history or are you making history? Repeating history is to fall back into or to resume, to continue old ways of looking at the world. And making history would be able to put this behind you and to move forward in a way that's very present and that's very liberating and that is as yet unexplored because you don't know what these things look like yet. And that is probably one of the greatest invitations from a future that someone born under Gemini or who has Gemini rising can answer. If you're born under Cancer or you have Cancer rising, Uranus at the bendings on June 12th, well, that might throw you for a bit of a loop. And that's because Uranus is the planet of revolution and change in astrology. Right now, the North Node is in the astrological sign of Pisces. the North Node entered the zodiac sign of Pisces in January of 2025. Now, this is a good thing for you because Pisces is a water sign, just like Cancer, which is a water sign, which means that the two signs trine one another. They share the same element. So if you look at the North Node as like your own personal North Star that you're guiding your ship by, the North Node is something that you can clearly see, you can clearly feel, and you can clearly understand because it's in the zodiac sign of Pisces. And it also happens to fall in that part of your solar chart that pertains to your higher purpose. So, this feeling of living your higher purpose in your life is something that you not only aspire to, but it's something that you're also actually doing right now. You are living the life that you dreamed about. You are enjoying the things that you hoped to have enjoyed one day. Sure, there may be certain details that you still have to take care of. There may be bills to pay and certain responsibilities and obligations you have to honor. But if you were to take a couple of steps back and really look at your life right now compared to what you wanted it to be years ago, you might see that you have many of the things that you had always longed for. It's a wonderful feeling to look around your life and to see that you're surrounded by the things that you wanted in your life. It's fulfilling and it's also inspiring. Now, Uranus at the bendings on June 12th is going to upset that feeling of peace and tranquility that I'm talking about, but it serves a higher purpose. So, what am I talking about? Well, I just described to you this feeling of having realized the things that you always wanted in your life and that you're actually living the life that you've wanted to live. And this is a wonderful thing. This is very satisfying. This can be very fulfilling. But what can also happen is that you can wind up replicating the life that came before. In other words, let's say you get the things that you want in your life, and this is wonderful. Naturally, you're going to want to aspire for more, or you might even want to make sure that these things are never going to go away. So you make choices that will secure them in place and stabilize your life. And when we make those decisions, when we make those choices, we can, without knowing it, repeat certain patterns that came before. We can repeat certain thoughts or values or habits. It's like, okay, now you're free to create the life you've always wanted, and you go and create that, and then you reproduce everything that you had before. You bring along with you all of those obligations, all of those responsibilities, all of those things you tell yourself you need to do or have to do in order to be successful. Okay, and this is what's called past baggage, which is something that's often associated to the South Node in astrology. This comes to us from evolutionary astrology, which talks about the North Node is where you're going on your spiritual evolutionary path, and the South Node as where you've been, which more often than not will refer to past lives and things like that. Now, I'm not talking to you here about past lives. I'm borrowing this as a metaphor. And what it can mean is that we can imagine something new and different and fresh, and we can even accomplish those things, but we might be telling ourselves the same things that we told ourselves about what we need to do to be successful, what we need to do to be secure, what we need to do to be stable. And this might be hindering you. This might be getting in the way of really giving full flight to your imagination or full capacity to your abilities right now. You might, in some ways, be crimping your own style. And so Uranus is here to say to you, it's time to get off the wheel. You don't go and accomplish these things in your life only to replicate what came before. You accomplish these things in your life because you're taking a step forward, and that's going to be followed by another step forward, and that's going to be followed by yet another step forward. So what's happening here is that Uranus is freeing you to follow that North Node, but it's freeing you in a way that's unexpected. It may be in a way that's uncomfortable. It may be in a way that you can't believe that you're making these decisions. Maybe it's freeing you from old friendships. Maybe it's freeing you from old routines. Maybe it's freeing you from things that you've always told yourself. So it's the idea of like, wow, can I really leave those friendships behind, those habits behind, those routines behind? It reminds me of, I hate to say this, but it reminds me of when I made a decision to stop smoking earlier in my life. There was a period of time in my life where, yes, I smoked. I was an aspiring actor and artist in New York City. That's what you did. You smoked. Okay. And I couldn't even imagine living life without that. And then I reached a point where I was like, okay, it's time for you to quit smoking. And that was really difficult. But I was able to go ahead and quit smoking. I did it gradually and I was able to go ahead and do it successfully. And my life was different after. But I could feel those old yearnings. I could feel that I was at a loss as to deal with anxieties if I couldn't light up a cigarette. Okay, now I had to face the anxieties. So this is what I'm talking about, that as we liberate ourselves from something, it's never a clean cut. It's never a clean liberation. You can bring the things that you were facing along with you, and maybe you don't put those to rest, but you have to find different ways to navigate them. You have to find different ways to manage them. So as you live a more engaged life, as you live a more purposeful life, you may be bringing along with you, as I said, past baggage, or I think what I'm really talking about is habitual ways of dealing with anxieties, like maybe you're telling yourself that it's all on your shoulders or only you can do this, things that hobble your efforts, things that really curb your ability to do things. So what Uranus and Gemini is going to do is that it's going to basically tell you it's time to quit. It's time to quit those past habits, those past routines, those past friendships and associations that were holding you back and bringing you down. And that's something that's very difficult for someone born under Cancer who has Cancer rising to do, because there's such a strong feeling of sentiment and a strong feeling of bonding and a strong feeling of belonging. But crabs outgrow their shells. And in essence, that's what's going on here with the Uranus energy. It's showing that you've outgrown this shell. It's showing you that you've outgrown perhaps this lifestyle or this way of thinking or this set of beliefs, and that it's time to embrace something new. And the new is organic, it's holistic, it emerges from life as you've already lived it. What's needed here is less about getting rid of the old you and more about adjusting to your future, to where you're going. It's more about placing more belief and faith in your future, more about connecting to your purpose. And when you connect this purpose, which is something that you're going to be doing over the next number of months, you're going to get a stronger sense of who you are, a stronger sense of where you're going. And this may be filled with the sadness for things that have passed, and that's good. You're a water sign. You should feel sad for the things that have passed. But what it can also mean is that you're putting away things that you have outgrown and that you're embracing a new future you, which is an organic result of everything that's come before. But at the same time, it's unchecked, it's unburdened, and it's the place that you can go freely and with great purpose and faith. If you're born under Leo or you have Leo rising, Uranus at the bendings on June 12th is going to be a wonderful experience for you. That's because Uranus will be in the zodiac sign of Gemini, and Gemini is an air sign. An air sign like Gemini forms a natural sextile to a fire sign like Leo. And although it's not a trine, meaning that they're not the same element, these are still two elements that understand one another. They get along with one another. They really enjoy one another's company. Now, do they have their differences? Absolutely. But that's what makes a sextile conversational. You can have differences, but then you talk them out. Differences can show up in things like, well, I would have done this in a different way than the way that you're doing it. Or differences might show up with questions like, well, why are you doing it like that? I mean, I'm interested. I just want to see like what your thinking is behind this. And so it can maybe sound a little challenging at times, or maybe even a little uncooperative. But as you have conversation, you begin to understand that this is a different point of view than you would have. This is a different approach than you would take. And that instead of limiting your world, it actually expands your world. Another wonderful thing to think about when you have a sextile between air and fire signs is that they are naturally uplifting. An image that I like to use is one of a hot air balloon, where you release the gas and the flame goes up and heats the air and it lifts the balloon and the balloon goes soaring up to new heights. And so, this feeling of being spirited, of being aloft, of being lifted to new heights is something that Uranus is bringing into your life. That might mean a change in the roster of the people that you know, or a change in the roster of the people that you work with. And so that might seem a little unsettling or a little discombobulating at first. But as time passes, you come to appreciate these new people coming into your life and the fresh perspectives that they bring. Now, as you might recall from what I said earlier in this forecast, Uranus is at the bendings. That means that it's squaring the two lunar nodes. It's putting you at a crossroads between where you want to go and where you've been. The North Node right now is in the zodiac sign of Pisces. It entered the zodiac sign of Pisces in January 2025, and it's been traveling through a part of your solar chart that isn't the easiest for you to understand or maybe even find appealing. It's a part of your solar horoscope that really has to do with issues of mortality, which sounds pretty heavy, but actually, that's what the solar eighth house is pretty much all about. It's a heavy house. It deals with our feelings around mortality, our feelings around things that are passing, time that is passing. And so, what can bring up these feelings of mortality might be perhaps someone going through a difficult time or going through financially stressful situations, or maybe dealing with health issues to some sort of degree. Something that's going to give you a feeling that you're not as invulnerable as you used to be, that you're not as devil may care or laugh it off as you used to be, that life can carry some pretty steep costs along with it. And since January of 2025, you might have experienced this. There might have been changes in your physical ability to do things. Maybe you can't do things like you used to before. And so there's that feeling of like, oh my God, I'm aging. Or there might have been a feeling of financial stresses showing up in your life, things that cast a pall over the things that you wanted to accomplish in your life. And there might also have been a feeling of being there for others and not being there for others in a way that you felt was right or enough. Maybe someone really needed you and circumstances were such that you weren't able to be there for that person in the fullest capacity that you wanted to be there for that person. These things can come up and they can put us in horrible predicaments where we have to make really, really tough choices. And you might have faced a series of events that were like that. And so there's been this kind of tinge of melancholy that's been in your life since January of 2025, where you might feel like you're fallen short of the goals and the things that you've wanted in life, where you might be thinking about the paths you didn't take or the choices you might be regretting to some degree, or maybe even guilt of not having been there for a friend or a loved one in the capacity that you felt that you should have been there for them, or where someone needed you and you just couldn't, you didn't have the financial ability to deliver. None of these things are really particularly appealing, and none of these things show anyone off in a good light. But nevertheless, that's what a North Node going through the eighth house can be all about. And so the question naturally arises of like, well, what's the point then of the North Node going through the eighth house? Is it to make me feel worse, as a person, or to feel bad or something along those lines? Like, it's not really showing me off in a flattering light, or it's bringing in all these feelings of guilt or dread or stress and things like that. Like, what's the point of this? And part of the answer to what the point of this is that it's life, that we don't always get or accomplish or achieve the things that we want to in our lives. And it's not like, well, you don't always get or achieve the things that you want to in your life, so suck it up. It's not that. It's more like, how do you respond to that? How do you incorporate that into your life? Do you feel defeated by it? Do you feel like oh, I wasn't there for someone, or oh, I didn't accomplish the things that I wanted to accomplish. And so I feel defeated. I feel like I didn't get to live the life that I really wanted to live. Is that a way that you react? Is another way that you react to blow it off, to pretend it's not a big deal, to hide it like a secret on the back of your closet, or change the subject if it should come up? So, what we don't always understand, we can go through these passages in our lives, but it's not about getting to the other side of the passage. It's not about like, okay, I'm going to take a breath and do the lap of a pool underwater or something along those lines. What it is that you get to live your life going through something like this. Things happen in life, they don't just cancel out life, they add to your life. And it's a little bit more profound than, well, you don't appreciate the good things unless you've been through the bad things. I don't know if many of us make that kind of mathematical equation. It's more like bad things can happen and you're alive. And how do you live with that? How do you deal with that? How do you incorporate that into your life? And sometimes it's heartbreak. Sometimes we're derailed. Sometimes we veer off into the ditch and it's hard to get back on track again. And sometimes we're sent in a whole other different direction. But these things that happen in life that aren't necessarily positive or life affirming can nevertheless be very profound. They can be very soulful. They can be very deepening. And I think that is probably part of the story of what the North Node in Pisces has been about for you. Now, is it going to be like this forever? No, the North Node changes signs in later July. So that will shift and that will change. But that doesn't mean that you've crossed the finish line and you're all better. What it means is that your life changes. It may not carry that same sense of burden or ennui or something along those lines with it, that sense of mortality. I mean, we have brushes with mortality every day, but some days we may feel more sensitive or more vulnerable. And so it leaves a deeper mark. Maybe the circumstance or the situation leaves a deeper mark. And then other days we go on with our lives anyway. What this North Node journey since January of 2025 has done is that it's deepened you. It's given you more profundity. It's given you a stronger valuing of time and who you are, and a valuing of the people in your life, whether they've just entered your life or whether they've been around there for years. So I think what's going to happen is that as Uranus at the bendings uplifts you, it brings new people into your life with different perspectives and experiences. What might have been years ago a kind of like, oh, wow, I'm done with those rough times and now it's good times and I don't want to think about them again. But right now in your life, it's like, oh, there's these new possibilities, these new alternatives. And I really value the newness of this because of what I've gone through. I really value choices because of what I've gone through. I really value these friendships, these associations, this time that I have with someone because of what I've gone through. And that changes us. It may not change us externally or our appearance or our prospects, but on an internal level, it changes us. It can change our belief system. It can change our value system, whether we're talking about financial values of things or moral values or emotional values. And these are things that are going to only add to you. It's like the difference between, I don't know, a Nouveau Beaujolais, a wine that's just been opened, it's just been harvested, and a wine that's sat on a shelf for years. It's vintage, it's come of age. There's something to that older wine, there's something to that vintage that gives it great value, it gives it great flavor, it gives it great profundity and history. These are the things that you're going to be taking along with you as Uranus becomes a bigger presence in your life, a more uplifting presence in your life. But that sense of what you've gone through, that melancholy that's there, it won't ever leave, but it's not going to be something that's going to hold you back or hobble you. It's something that's going to give you a deeper and a very soulful appreciation for your life and the way that you live it. If you're born into Virgo or you have Virgo rising, Uranus at the bendings on June 12th is going to be an electrifying experience for you. Uranus is now passing over that part of your solar chart that pertains to your midheaven. This used to be called the House of Destiny in older astrology, but nowadays it's more associated with your career, with your status in life. And what you can have with Uranus going over this part of your solar chart is a sudden breakthrough or a sudden breakdown. And I'm not ruling out the possibility of both taking place at the same time. I have seen times in which Uranus over the 10th house has brought an amazing promotion or a sudden surge forward, step up in your career where you take on new responsibilities and you're acting on a whole different playing field than what has come before. And then I've seen times in life in which Uranus going over that part of your solar chart that's associated to the midheaven has brought a sudden collapse, a sudden breakdown, where all of a sudden things that used to mean something in terms of your career are suddenly leveled. They're raised. They're brought down to the ground. That can sometimes be a firing. That can sometimes be letting go or the end of an industry or a company, something along those lines. And that sounds completely dreadful. And that's not anything anyone would wish on anyone else and awful. But I have to tell you something. It's not just like, oh, you're thrown out, you went through a bad spell, now figure out what you want to do with your life. I've seen so many times with Uranus going over that midheaven that Uranus, we talk about it in terms of revolution and change, upsetting the old order. And that's what I'm describing here. But at the same time, what we forget is that revolution also pertained to the orbit of a planet around the sun. That when a planet completes its orbit around the sun, it was said to have completed one revolution, one spin of the wheel around the sun. So what can happen is that you may lose in a certain situation, but it may have opened you up for something new and oftentimes something better. Sometimes we have to be thrown out of that lightning struck tower. If you're familiar with that card from the Tarot, it's a tower that's struck by lightning and people are falling out of it into churning oceans and seas. And it's often referred to a collapse of a longstanding structure, of a secure structure. And this is seen as something dreadful and awful. But at the same time, that structure could have become a prison. That structure could have become something that inhibited you, that forced you to stay in a situation that you didn't want to be in because of mounting obligations and responsibilities. And when that collapses, you're free to go. I mean, it takes a little while for the dust to settle and for you to pick yourself up out of the rubble and figure out where you are, but you're free to go. And that's something that's really important to keep in mind with Uranus here. So Uranus can either be moving up a whole step up in terms of your profession and your career, and then taking on all of those new responsibilities and obligations, but it could also symbolize a breakdown in terms of the career. And that even though you might be shocked by this experience, at the same time, it's enlivening and enlightening because you're free to make something different of what you want. So this is what Uranus is doing right now in your chart and will be doing for the next few months. One of the things that it's doing, because as I mentioned earlier in this forecast, it's at the bendings, which means that it's squaring both lunar nodes, is that it's squaring the north node and the south node. The north node in your solar horoscope is in that part of the chart that deals with relationships, associations, and partnerships. And so the north node energy might have made the issue of a relationship or a partnership or an association a really important one since January of 2025. Maybe it's a decision that you're trying to make about the future of this partnership or association. Maybe it's you wanting to be with someone, but circumstances have kept you apart. or someone coming back into your life and circumstances keeping you apart. Circumstances, they always get in the way in things like this. And so they're thwarting you. And so this is a challenge of reuniting or being together. And that might be what you're facing. But at the same time, to get back to an earlier thought that I had, what this could also symbolize is a change in the balance of power in a relationship, a change in the balance of power in an association, a change in the balance of power in a partnership. Let's say you were the one who brought home the bacon. And so you made the money, you're the money maker, you bring home the bacon, and your partner doesn't make as much as you and is tending to the home fires and things like that. So you might have felt like you could make the decisions and what you said go and things like that. Well, what if you're going through a period of time right now in which you're no longer the one who's bringing home the bacon? That maybe it's the spouse or the lover who's gotten a step up in terms of their career. They're in the superior position. What's that going to feel like, that kind of a change? Are you going to be supportive of that person now that they've gotten their breakthrough? Or are you going to feel competitive in some way? Are you going to want to hold on to what you had? Or you might even be like, wow, okay, it's your turn to bring home the bacon. Whew, I've done that for, X amount of years. And so I'm more than happy to let you go and do that. I mean, that might be your experience as well. But let's say you're in a partnership and the balance of power changes in that partnership. That's going to change the way that responsibility is delegated. It's going to change the way that responsibility is shouldered. And so that not only brings a readjustment, but it brings a reexamination of how the two of you work together. And so these are the things that might be very strong right now. So let's bring in Uranus at the bendings. Let's say it's brought you up in the world. Let's say it's made you a more successful person. There may be tensions in the association, whether it's a business partnership or a love relationship. There may be tensions in which the other person feels like you're going to leave them, or the other person feels like, how are they going to balance your partnership now that you've become an equal player, maybe even have a more superior hand? What does that say about your working relationship? And that's something that you're going to want to be sensitive to. What you also want to be sensitive to is if you had been in the lesser position, right? Is there resentment that had built over a period of time? Are you like, it's my turn now and I'm going to rub this person's nose in it? I mean, sometimes those feelings of competition can come out with our successes, and they can impact the way that we relate to other people. So that might also be something very much to keep in mind here. So then let's work with the reverse turn of the wheel with that. Let's say that you're suddenly not in the position of superiority that you had been, what I was referring to earlier, bringing home the bacon. Do you feel beholden to this other person? Are you sensitive to any sort of command that you are getting, or that the other person is bossing you around? Are there fears of vulnerability or loss of power or prestige that are now coming out? So these are things which may very well be appearing as a result of Uranus at the bendings, and they may impact a relationship. They may rupture a relationship, but that doesn't mean that they have to break apart a relationship. What's wonderful about going through a period of time like this is that it allows you to get to know one another again, to re-engage one another again. Yes, there's an upset in terms of the balance of power of what this partnership is, but each of you has had a history of living what the other person is now experiencing. If you were the one bringing home the bacon and you aren't anymore, then you know what that's like, and you're going to understand what the person who's now bringing home the bacon is going through. Or let's say you were the supportive one, and suddenly you're the one who's in the superior position. You're going to understand what it was like to be the supportive one. You're going to remember the sacrifices perhaps that you made, how much that you were really, really happy for the person, how much maybe you felt beholden to the person. There's going to be a whole mix of emotions. So even though things have shifted and changed, and even though the tables have turned and the shoe is on the other foot, that doesn't mean that you don't understand where the other person is coming from. Your history is now being lived by the other person. And so that can help you to get through this change as you discuss and talk over things and find what your new roles are with one another. But it can also bring you closer together. So something that might have at first signaled maybe a breakdown in a relationship may actually turn around and wind up being an enormous breakthrough. If you're born under Libra or you have Libra rising, Uranus at the bendings on June 12th is going to be a wonderful experience for you. And that's because Uranus, the planet of revolution and change, is in the zodiac sign of Gemini. Gemini is an air sign, just like Libra, which is an air sign, which means that the planet will be forming a trine to you by sign. A trine is a harmonious energy. It's a supportive energy. It's very simpatico, and it's very helpful to you in the things that you want to accomplish and do in your life. So where Uranus typically might have brought tumult, it might have been upsetting, it might have kicked over the game board and sent all the pieces flying. Instead, because if it's trying to you by sign, it being in the zodiac sign of Gemini, Uranus becomes enlightening, enlivening, and empowering. These are the aspects that it will take on in your life. You will feel positively electric in terms of the energy that you have in your life. People will look at you in a very different way, like almost as if they had been in a dark room and suddenly the light came on and they turn around and they see you and you're like lovely and beautiful and wonderful. So this is going to be very magnetic. This is going to be very charismatic. And you're going to find a lot of people sitting up and taking notice of you, listening to the things that you have to say, paying attention to unspoken feelings, and making sure that you're happy with whatever arrangements they may be helping you out with. So this is a wonderful period of time for you, a period of time in which you will feel like you're living according to your higher nature, that the things that you've always longed for or wanted for yourself are coming true, and that you really feel like you're living a purpose-driven life, that you're living according to the way that you should always have lived in your life. And again, this can be a very rewarding and an enlightening time for you. And what's nice is that it's not going to be going on for a couple of days or a couple of weeks or months. It's going to be going on for a few years, at least 7, and maybe even more than that. So what you might recall from earlier in the forecast is that Uranus is squaring the 2 lunar nodes. It's squaring both the north node, which is in Pisces, and the south node, which is in Virgo. Now, the north node in Pisces has been an interesting experience for you since it entered the zodiac sign of Pisces in January of 2025. The north node has been leading you to situations that, let's face it, given your druthers, you wouldn't have really chosen to go. That's because the north node is traveling through your solar 6th house in astrology. And the solar 6th house has to do with work, health, and service. And these might be areas of life which have been important to you since January of 2025. The 6th house is a subservient house. It doesn't have to be. It's the house of service, but a lot of times people can react to it as if it's subservient and that they have to be servile, that they have to be beholden to someone else. It can feel like you're under someone else's thumb when you've got a north node that's traveling through the 6th house. You will naturally work hard and you'll naturally want to do the best job that you can possibly do. But at the same time, you may not feel like you have a big say in your life, that someone else has the say, that if someone has demands or commands, that you have to answer those demands and commands. Being born under Libra or having Libra rising, you're going to be really quite sensitive to that. Libra is a fascinating sign. It's one of the most fascinating signs to me because Libra, as we all know, is the zodiac sign of the balance. And Libra will often be represented in popular astrology. The way that people talk about anyone born under Libra is that they can't make up their mind, that they vacillate, that they're wishy-washy. And that's not really what's going on with people born under Libra or who have Libra rising. What's going on is that they are weighing things in the balance. That's what the scales are all about. And they're doing this in order to come to a judgment, a fair judgment of a situation. And the hesitancy to answer right away is because people born in Libra or have Libra rising need to judge what's going on in the situation. So there's this feeling of sitting in judgment of, but at the same time, there's this feeling of being in service to what is fair. So people born under Libra or Libra rising can feel this authority in their life, but at the same time, that authority is in service to other people. It's in service to justice. It's in service to rules and laws. It's in service to being fair and balanced. So what happened here when the North Node started transiting your solar sixth house is you lost that sense of authority. Now, you might have actually lost a position of authority in your life. You might actually have experienced that, a position that you enjoyed either professionally or in your own personal life. So that what you've been feeling since the January of 2025 is being beholden to other people in your life. Again, that might have been something that happened circumstantially, or maybe it was something in which you had chosen to retreat, to not be as present in a relationship or an association because you felt like it was imbalanced or that you were being exploited in some way or something along those lines. So there's been this feeling since January of 2025 of not really being able to exercise your choices, not being able to exercise your authority, of living a life without those things. Now, these aren't experiences that we choose to go and have in life. I mean, I don't think anyone experiences like, I wonder what life would be like if I had no authority. We're like, I'm just going to give my authority away and see what happens. We don't choose these experiences, but these experiences can happen. Things in life can go awry. They cannot turn out the way that we had expected them to. And this has been your lesson since the January of 2025. You might have had to make sacrifices. You might have had to make do. There might have been a feeling of being at other people's beck and call. It might have been like Cinderella, who lived as a princess, and then all of a sudden something went wrong and she finds herself back in front of that fireplace again. It's like, what happened to my crown? So this might have been the experience. And this experience is coming to an end. I mean, the nodes change signs in late July. And in fact, the North Node will go from Pisces to Aquarius, where it will trine your own sign in Libra, and you'll feel like things are back on track, like things are simpatico. I mean, certainly the Uranus will go from a squaring energy to a trining energy. Uranus is in Gemini, it's an air sign. Aquarius is an air sign. So there will be a trine that's going on there, and that will be good. That will be supportive of you. But what do you take from what you've experienced moving forward? All right. You may come back into a feeling of a position of authority. You may come back into a position of having a say or rendering judgment. So, what has this period of time when you were at the beck and call of other people, when you didn't have this, what has it done to you? Has it made you jaded? Has it broken your heart? Has it broken your spirit? Or has it perhaps given you a deeper appreciation for those who serve? Does it give you a deeper appreciation for those who don't win a judgment? When you're born into the sign of judgment, what's automatically taken into account is someone's going to benefit and someone is not going to benefit. And that can play out in a myriad of different ways. I mean, someone is found innocent, and that's a great benefit. That's a good thing. Or someone is found innocent through technicalities, but they actually did something guilty. And so the people who have been offended or angry, I mean, things can play out in different ways. And what this North Node in Pisces might have given you a feeling of is what it's like to be on the losing end of a situation. Again, does it make you hardened? Does it make you retaliatory? Does it make you angry? And it can produce those feelings. It can make people feel that way. But has it perhaps made you, in the spirit of the zodiac sign of Pisces, has it perhaps made you more compassionate? Has it perhaps made you more sympathetic? Has it perhaps introduced more of a notion of mercy into your life so that when we judge things moving forward, and I'm not saying that before you were cavalier or unmoved by people that you were making judgments over, but moving forward, that there's a sort of compassion, that there's a sympathy, so that when you render these judgments, they're things that you really do think through, but maybe at the same time, it allows you to address in a very genuine and sympathetic manner the people who've been hurt. Sometimes we don't respond to the person who lost out. It's like those contests where it's like, she's Miss America, and then all of a sudden the other contestants disappear, and like there's a spotlight on Miss America. Well, maybe there's a more sense of feeling for the contestants who have disappeared, and maybe they don't disappear. Maybe they are people that you address from the bench of your life. So I think that this experience of the North Node going through Pisces, even though you probably didn't really like or cherish being in a position of perhaps powerlessness since January of last year, now that you're coming back into a position of power again, you will take with you what that feeling was like. And that can only deepen you as a person and make you more generous in the way that you enjoy your own prosperity, but also generous in the way that you show feeling and sensitivity and benevolence towards other people. If you're born under Scorpio or you have Scorpio rising, Uranus at the bendings, well, that's going to come as quite a surprise to you. Now, I don't mean to sound cryptic by saying something like that. It's not going to be like, that's going to be a surprise to you, and you'll find out when you find out. No, that's not what I mean. It's going to be a surprise to you because you're going to be like, oh, really? Huh. That's going to be more along the lines of the experience of what Uranus at the bendings will bring. But let me explain that to you. In this setup, we know that Uranus at the bendings forms a square to the two lunar nodes, the North Node and the South Node. In this situation, the North Node has been traveling through the zodiac sign of Pisces since January of 2025. Pisces, as you might recall, is a water sign, just like Scorpio is a water sign. So this North Node, this North Star that you are steering your ship by, is light and bright and easy to see. You've never lost sight of it since the North Node entered the zodiac sign of Pisces in January of 2025. So what this means, if the North Node always represents where you're going in your life, perhaps the lessons you need to learn and the aspirations you need to realize, well, sometimes the North Node can ask us to move beyond our comfort zone with that maybe we have to sacrifice something to move forward, or maybe we have to endure something to learn that lesson. When the North Node is trining you by sign, the sacrifices aren't that steep, and the learning curve is not that slow, and the road ahead is not that arduous or difficult. You can see where you want to go. You can recognize that this would be good for you. And so it becomes natural that you would direct your ship in that general direction. So here the North Node has been like a star leading you forward in your life. And that feeling might have really become stronger in January of 2025. So what's going on here, and it's rather fascinating for Scorpios, is that life isn't as bad as it used to be. And you might immediately be like, shh, quiet, Christopher, don't say that out loud. Scorpios are always associated with Sturm und Drang. Life always takes a turn for the worse with Scorpios. And that's because one of your ruling planets is Pluto. Pluto is named after the Lord of the Underworld. And you never know when you're going to be walking along in your life and the earth is going to suddenly open up and fire will bellow out from below and you will be taken down into the underworld to experience all of these ordeals and transformations that are meant to make you a better person. Scorpios grow by going through difficult times, by enduring rough passages. That's basically what makes you grow and evolve as a person. Is this by choice? No. Given your druthers, you'd rather pick a different path, but it's something that you're used to. It's something that you've grown accustomed to. But very quietly, over the past few years, you might have noticed that things haven't gotten as dire, that things haven't gotten as drastic, that things aren't always taking a turn for the worse. And you might have really secretly enjoyed this, like celebrated actually having love in your life, celebrated loving what you do for a living, celebrating the people you cherish, the wonderful blessings that you've experienced. And you might have found yourself a bit quiet about that. If people are like, hey, things seem to be going really well for you, you might have turned to that person and been like, quiet, quiet, shh, and said, no, they're not. They're still rough. I still have to face these issues at work and things like that. And the person's like, oh, okay. And you might have found yourself doing that because you don't want to tempt fate. You don't want fate to see you smile and say, Scorpio's been enjoying their lives for a little bit too long. I wonder what new wrinkle I can throw in their direction. So you've been very guarded about your good fortune. You've been very quiet about your accomplishments and things going your way because you don't want this to be taken away from you again. What's going on here with the North Node in Pisces is this feeling like life is actually being good to you, that things have been going in your direction, that there's this experience of fulfillment, and this is really nice, and that you could get used to this. And then there's a part of you that draws yourself short and says, don't get used to it. Because once you do, once you lean back in that chair and throw up your feet on the leg rest, it's all going to go to hell in a handbasket. It's not going to go to hell in a handbasket. Yes, we can go through periods of life that can be very trying and challenging and difficult. And then we can go through periods of life that are really nice, where we reap what we've sown, periods of life in which we deserve the stability, the security, the fulfillment, the happiness that we enjoy. So what's happening here with Uranus at the bendings and where it happens to fall in your solar chart regarding the two nodes is that Uranus at the bendings is saying to you, things have turned around. They have changed for you. This is your new normal. This is your new life. Things are actually going to be really nice for you moving forward. So this puts you in a bit of a dilemma. As a Scorpio, you've had a lot invested in what you've gone through and the difficulties you've surpassed. And now life is supposed to be nice. Can I trust it? And the thing is, you can. Does that mean you get everything you want and you can live life like a lottery winner or something like that? No. But it does mean that things are going to be going your way and that you can relax your guard a bit. So what the North Node is saying is that things are going your way. You can take this in. And instead of like being that person who's pushed their way to the front of the line at the buffet dinner and is waiting to be allowed to go to the buffet and heaps all the food on their plate as if they're never going to eat again, and goes back to a table and eats it. You don't have to be like that. You can be more relaxed and carefree and enjoy this feeling of good fortune in your life. Things will still be difficult or challenging, but not to the degree that they've been difficult and challenging. So this is a time in your life in which you get to enjoy these things. And I would encourage you to enjoy these things. You've worked very hard for them. You've suffered very hard for them. You've sacrificed a lot for them. And so now it's time for you to revel and enjoy these things. And this is pretty much what Uranus at the bendings is showing you. It's the shock and a realization that things could actually go your way. And what does a Scorpio do when things are going your way and you're enjoying good fortune? One would like to think, oh, you can immediately sit back and enjoy it, but it's probably going to take you a little while to get used to that. And as you get used to that, revel in it, appreciate it, value it, and be there for other people who are going through difficult times, and be there to reassure them and to support them in their difficult times, because you are living proof that life doesn't always stay so difficult or arduous. If you're born under Sagittarius, or you have Sagittarius rising, Uranus at the bendings on June 12th is going to be quite revealing for you. The big question that I see looking at your horoscope is, are you really going to give it all up for just one person? And the answer may very well be yes. This flies in the face of commonplace understandings of the zodiac sign of Sagittarius. Sagittarius is known as being fiercely independent, going it alone, and maybe suffering from more than just a mild dose of commitment phobia. Yet with Uranus passing through that part of your solar horoscope that deals with partners, spouses, and creative collaborations, you might find yourself doing a complete about face. Now, does that mean that you've actually found the person that you want to be with? Perhaps. I mean, there's good reason to believe that that might be exactly what's going on or is about to go along. When we think of Uranus as being the planet of revolution and change, we think of overthrowing someone that's in power. The peasants are lifting their pitchforks and they're rising up against the rulers in Versailles, something along those lines. But revolution can also be the idea of doing something revolutionary, something that's radically different from what we've done before. And so Uranus can also be a planet that brings a lot of about faces. It's like St. Paul on the road to Damascus. He starts out to Damascus to persecute Christians, and then this bolt strikes from out of the blue, and he's struck blind, and he hears this voice saying, "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?" And he has a complete change of mind. He's like, instead of persecuting Christians, I'm now going to champion Christians, be on their side, and probably become the most famous Christian writer that there ever was. He even renames himself Paul. Okay, so these about faces often happen when Uranus is very powerful, especially if it's in an opposite position. For instance, Uranus is now in Gemini, which is the zodiac sign that's opposite yours in astrology. So you might be experiencing right now a complete about face about relationships, partnerships, and creative collaborations. There may be less of a sense of needing to be free or apart or distant from, and more of a sense of really wanting to be with this person romantically, or really wanting to engage in joint partnership or joint finances with someone that you're in business with, or really see someone as a creative collaborator, someone who's really bringing out exciting ideas in you and you're bringing out exciting ideas in them. So this could be a very revelatory position or situation that Uranus at the bendings is doing. And if you recall from earlier in the forecast, you have to make a choice. You have to make a choice between the South Node and the North Node. The North Node in astrology is always where you're going in life, and the South Node is where you've been. In January 2025, the North Node entered the zodiac sign of Pisces, and this would have had a very powerful impact on you because Pisces is a Jupiter-ruled sign, just like Sagittarius. What you might have experienced with the North Node entering the zodiac sign of Pisces is not only a complete change of heart, but a complete opening of your heart. Maybe you found someone new. Maybe you found someone. Maybe all of a sudden you realized that you wanted to reunite with someone from the past. Or maybe you felt like you wanted to try again when it came to love, romance, or entering into some sort of professional or creative collaboration. And so with this openness that's been going on in your soul, you would have turned around or changed your direction from running away from something to running towards something which had a great deal of personal resonance for you and profundity for you in your life. So you might have already met this person. And if you haven't met this person yet, you may be on the verge of meeting this person. Again, this could be romantic, this could be professional, or this could be some sort of creative collaboration. So what's going on here is this feeling of, I really want this in my life. It really has meaning for me in my life, and I'll do whatever I need to make this happen. And this might be surprising to people who felt like they knew you best in your life, like your loved ones and friends. They might be like, what's gotten into you? You're always talking about how to get out of a relationship, how to sneak out the back door from an association. You're always talking about how you're never going to be held down by anyone in your life. And now it's like you've totally turned around in the way that you are doing these things. What's going on with you? And you yourself may be wondering, yeah, what's going on with me? Because it's so different. It's so unlike you. But can you trust it? Is it like you? Is it where you need to be going? Well, the answer to that would be the North Node in Pisces. The North Node is always talking about where you need to be going. And so the answer would be like, yes, this feeling of wanting to be with someone, to commune with someone on a very deep level, this feeling of belonging is something that's very important. And if that means upsetting some of the long-standing commitments in your life, you'll do it. So it's fascinating because obviously what I'm describing is very passionate and it's very risk-taking, but it's also right in terms of the way that the stars are set up right now. Sometimes the stars impel us to do things that other people might find questionable, but nevertheless are more in keeping with our true self than the fixtures, than the things that define us in our lives to other people. Now, in case you're wondering, well, Christopher, the nodes do change signs at the end of July, and so will this just be a passing thing? My answer would be no, because the North Node will move into the zodiac sign of Aquarius, where it will be forming a trine to Uranus in Gemini. So if circumstances kept you from being with someone, that will change. Circumstances will now push you to be with that person. If you feel like you're taking an enormous risk and you're risking it all, you may find that it was either worth the risk or that what you felt would be the consequences aren't as dour or as difficult as you originally imagined. So this is very much on course for you, this turnabout in terms of a relationship or an association or a partnership. And I think that what you're going to find is much more of a fuller sense of who you are now that you found that person that you're, for lack of a better way of putting it, that you're meant to be with. And this is the thing that maybe in all of your commitment phobia and ducking and dodging and things like that, this has maybe all been leading you to where you are right now, and perhaps in a way was meant to happen all along. If you're born under Capricorn or you have Capricorn rising, Uranus at the bendings on June 12th might come as a bit of a shock to you, but it's not a shock in a bad way. It's more along the lines of a shock in a, really? Can I trust this? Way. What I'm looking at here is what I referred to earlier in the forecast. Uranus at the bendings means that it's squaring the two lunar nodes, the North Node and the South Node. The North Node is where you need to be going in your life, the lessons you need to learn to perhaps become a better or more fulfilled person. And the South Node is where you've been. And those are the things that you've already done. And so going back to them would be regressive. These could be situations that you've endured or struggled with, and now they're behind you and you're moving forward in your life, and that's a good thing. But if you were to stop and say, well, I'm not meant to have good things in my life, I need to go back to things being difficult and dreary because that's what I'm more comfortable with, that would be seen as regressive or choosing a South Node course over a North Node course. Now, what's working to your benefit is that the North Node is in the zodiac sign of Pisces, and Pisces is a water sign. Water signs may not trine earth signs like Virgo and Taurus trine earth signs like you, a Capricorn, but water signs form sextiles to your sign in earth. You may not get the unconditional support that a trine would bring, but you definitely get a collaborator. You definitely get someone who's in your corner and wants to see things work out for the best, may not agree with the way that you're doing it, may question it, but it's a questioning that takes place in the service of collaboration, of finding better ways to go about what it is you want to go about in your life. And so, what you might have experienced since the North Node entered Pisces in January of 2025 is this change in your lifestyle, this change in the way that you live. Suddenly, you might have had to pay attention to the details in your life. And this might have begun as obstacles and trials and tribulations and things like this. They might have begun with minor inconveniences that became quite major over a period of time. But what it was doing is that it was bringing your focus back to your day to day. Capricorns in general have a tendency to think in terms of the bigger picture, the great things that are yet undone, the great mountaintops that I've yet to summit. Remember that you were born under the zodiac sign of the mountain goat. So, what happens when your attention or focus is brought to the day to day things in your life? You may feel like you're being tripped up by minor inconveniences, that those things that somebody else should be taking care of now are on your platter and you have to take care of them. Or you can't bear how you have to stop everything you're doing that's so important to take care of this ridiculous chore. So Capricorns can be very like, don't make me take care of chores. I'm after greater ambitions. Well, that has switched right now with the nodes and where they're posited in your solar horoscope. So it's all about taking care of the smaller things in life. And as I said, beginning in January 2025, that might have begun as minor inconveniences that actually escalated to huge headaches. But what this has taught you is that there are things that need to be taken care of in your life, that the direction of your life is not all about the things that have yet to be done or the all important tasks that you need to go out and accomplish and achieve. That there is such a thing as a quality of life. There is such a thing as the day you wake up in, that the day you wake up in is a precious day. And it may be full of opportunities, or it may be full of dreary chores, obstacles that you have to face, but it's a new day and it's fresh and it's new, and it deserves the new and fresh perspective that every day gets as it experiences the sun rising over it. And so there's this kind of being here and now quality that's been associated to your North Node. And yes, maybe those minor inconveniences turned into major headaches, but it's taught you a real appreciation for your life and the things that are in your life. It's taught you that sometimes the small things get overlooked, and the small things may require your attention, or the small things may have treasures of their own. They may have joys and blessings of their own, that it's not all about those faraway summits or those impossible obstacles. So being centered in the here and now of your life is actually a really wonderful feeling. I mean, you may feel less like things are wanting, or less like you have to go and address things that are outside your reach. And you may feel more like actually things are in your reach if you treated them more like a typical day-to-day chore, or maybe even taking care of the day-to-day chores, or checking up on your health, or something like that, is something that brings you good health and good stability and good security in your life. There's a joy to be found in the small things. So what the Uranus at the bendings is going to bring in your life is reinforcement of focusing on the smaller things in life rather than the grander things in life. Uranus can be about a realization, a revelation, and you may come to an understanding that you've been pouring a lot of your energy into these big things, that you've maybe even been making a big deal out of big things, and that you're working hard. That ethos of working hard has actually in reality been working hard at working hard, and that maybe there's joy to be taken in the life that you're living right now and the people who are here, that instead of treating people as responsibilities and obligations, you treat them as company, as intimates, as the company that you keep and the people that you enjoy. And so what I think this Uranus in Gemini, by switching the focus from those distant mountaintops to the ground that you're standing on, is going to do is, as I said, it's going to bring up a great deal more appreciation for what you have in your life, a joy in the things that you have in your life. But it's also going to change your approach to those bigger things. Instead of them seeing so larger than life, they might seem more manageable or in reach. Certainly, a sextile between your sign and the North Node puts aspirations in reach. They're not things that, you have to travel far away to go out and do. In fact, a North Node in this particular placement in your solar horoscope says that these things are in reach, and that actually many of the things that you want to accomplish in your life are much easier to do than you thought before. And it's going to be this feeling like pieces are falling into place, that things are coming together. And I think the big attitude adjustment is going to be changing your attitude from finding out what's wrong with that or making something that shows up harder than it has to be, because this is what you've been used to. You've been used to things being yanked away last minute or falling apart, or your luck running out, or all of a sudden being handed more work from work that you had done, or just having to just work harder than anyone else that you know. This feeling of things approaching you, coming together in a very easy way, in a very accessible way. This may be the most revolutionary change in your thinking of all. And with this revolutionary change comes innovation and invention, and the pleasure of things not having to be as hard as they've had to have been before. If you're born under Aquarius or you have Aquarius rising, Uranus at the bendings on June 12th is going to be a revolutionary time for you. Now, being an Aquarius, you understand the energy of Uranus. Uranus happens to be one of your ruling planets. You have two ruling planets, Saturn and Uranus. Saturn is the traditional ruler, and Uranus is the modern ruler. Now, Uranus doesn't knock Saturn out of the sky vis-a-vis you. What it does is that it sort of co-parents alongside Saturn. You have to pay attention as much to Saturn as you do to Uranus. Now, as I just mentioned, Uranus is the planet of revolution and change. And what it often does is that it knocks over the game board and it sends all the chess pieces flying when it enters your sign or aspects it in some sort of very important and profound way. So Uranus has a reputation for upsetting things, for turning things upside down, inside out, and introducing a lot of chaos. But being an Aquarius, you're not only familiar with that type of energy, but you also understand how that energy leads to higher thinking. It leads to clarity of thought. It leads to getting rid of the things that were getting in your way and living a fuller and more realized life. Now, this is exactly what you're going to be experiencing with Uranus now in the zodiac sign of Gemini. Gemini is an air sign, just like Aquarius is an air sign. So not only is one of your ruling planets, Uranus, traveling through a zodiac sign that trines your sign, which means that it gives you unconditional support, but Uranus is your ruling planet. So Uranus is also saying, this is the direction that you need to go. So what is the direction that you need to go in? Well, as I said, it's a revolutionary direction for you. In fact, you might almost experience it as a profound about face. Some of this has already been set in motion by the North Node traveling through the zodiac sign of Pisces. Pisces sits next to your sign on the zodiacal wheel, so it's a sign that you have an affinity for simply by proximity. It's kind of like your next door neighbor in the zodiac. But at the same time, just because someone's your next door neighbor, you don't really know what their house looks like or what's going on in their life or anything along those lines. Unless you've been invited over for tea or you went over to borrow a cup of sugar, you might be living beside someone, but not really know too much about them other than hello, hi, as you walk your dog or come home from the end of a workday. Pisces, at its root, is a zodiac sign that's very much associated with vision. Now, vision is a dream, but it's not a dream like a dream that you had the night before that you wake up in the morning and can barely remember, or that you wake up in the morning and you realize that there was some deep, significant symbolism that you're sitting there in your bed sheets trying to figure out what exactly that meant. That's not the sort of dream that we're talking about when we're talking about Pisces. The dream that we're talking about when we're talking about Pisces is the dream of a better future, a dream of a better place. This is something that dovetails very nicely with your own zodiac sign. Aquarius is the zodiac sign of utopia, that perfect society that lays somewhere in the future where people will be equal, where people will be happy, and they can live the best sort of life that they can be. It's something that everyone sort of strives for in terms of making the world a better place, which is another way of talking about a utopia, a perfect society to live in. And that pretty much stands at the heart of almost every Aquarian. Neptune has a tendency to be more sacrificing about something like that. It has a vision of the way that things can be, but it can also be this feeling like we're going to have to make sacrifices to make that happen, that we're going to have to reach outside our comfort zone. We're going to have to do without things, or maybe undergo things that are very challenging and that are very painful in our life in order to make these things happen. That dream, that vision that Pisces is very much concerned with. One of my favorite examples of that is Martin Luther King Jr., who had this dream of America being a better place, but that wasn't going to happen through visualization or chanting mantras. That was going to happen through the very real work of peaceful protest and incurring the pain and the difficulties and the sacrifices that brought about by taking on a nonviolent approach to protest. And that was something that he taught this nation how to do. And that ushered in civil rights as being a very important plank in our society. What's fascinating about where the North Node is placed, which is in the zodiac sign of Pisces, and where it's been residing since January of 2025, is it's indicating in your chart an about face in your relationship to finances. As an Aquarius, you have a tendency to put others first. That if someone needs something, that you will help them out. And you might help them out practically, or you might help them out emotionally, or you might help them out even financially. In fact, there's a tendency to not really see finances as being a top priority in your life. That if everyone is working a good job, and that if everyone is making money, that this is something that is going to be shared by everyone. It's part of that utopian vision or that utopian ideal that Aquarians have. But what you've been dealing with since the North Node entered that part of your solar chart that deals with finances in January of 2025 is a realization that you have to start balancing that more in your life. And this realization might have come through money that you owe other people, or debt, or the fact that you're working harder than what you are being paid for. And you might have come to this realization between January 2025 and now that you need to put yourself first financially. Now, that's going to be a very weird hat for you to wear. Again, as an Aquarius, you will put the welfare of other people ahead of your own and save yourself for last. But now that you're realizing that that has cost you over a period of time, it's time to put yourself forward right now. Now, I don't see this as being a sudden thing from out of the blue. Uranus is, after all, forming a trine to your own sign. I think it's a realization that has been dawning probably since maybe about 2021, that something has to change in terms of the way that you prioritize in your life, and that you're coming to a place in which you need to prioritize yourself. Now, that is probably one of the hardest things for someone born under Aquarius or who has Aquarius rising to do. Putting others' needs in front of yours is very natural. Putting your needs ahead of them doesn't feel right. It's selfish. That's a bad thing. But what's going on here is that circumstances are dictating it. They're saying you need to do this, but then opportunities are showing up in such a way as to show where you can do this. What I want to point out here is that even though the North Node is in Pisces now, at the end of July of this year, the North Node will move into Aquarius. And so it will be forming a trine to your ruling planet Uranus in Gemini. This puts you first, okay? And it's not going to happen because it's like, it's time for me to think about me now. That would never happen in Aquarian's life. But what's going to happen is that you will see that you need to put your own needs first, but it's happening in conjunction to that vision that you have of making the world a better place. Aquarians have to have that ideal. They have to have that thing that they work towards. And I think what you may be experiencing in your life is a meeting of ideal and means, that you have a need to put yourself first financially, but that also the opportunity and the means are becoming available. So what I would encourage you as an astrologer to do is to follow that, to not shy away from it, to not be like, well, what's Betty going to do? Just to be like, this is my time and I can do a greater good for more people if I'm taking care of myself financially, economically, health-wise, those earth sign types of ideas. The more that you take care of yourself, it's like what they say in the airplane, put the oxygen mask on first and then help your neighbor out with theirs. You need to be able to take care of yourself in order to help people out. And this is something that I think will be forming as an equation, as something that you can do in the weeks ahead. And I think not only is this going to fulfill you more as a person, but it's also going to give you agency to do more than what you were ever able to do before. If you're born under Pisces or you have Pisces rising, this Uranus at the bendings is going to be pretty interesting for you. Part of the reason why I say pretty interesting for you is because right now you have the North Node traveling through your own zodiac sign. The North Node has been in your zodiac sign since January of 2025. The nodes in astrology talk about where you're going and where you've been. The North Node talks about where you're going, and the South Node talks about where you've been. And the idea, especially as it's understood in evolutionary astrology, is that you want to follow the North Node because the North Node is committed to your evolution as a person and a soul and a spirit. And your South Node is associated more with the trappings of the past. That might be a past life or your childhood or things that you lived earlier in this life. The idea is that wherever the South Node is, it's the part of you that's been there, done that. So you need to say goodbye to it. But it's the part of you that also is associated with your personal baggage or even your spiritual baggage, if you think about past lives, and that you need to put that baggage out by the side of the road, that it's hindering you, that it's weighing you down, that it's keeping you from being the best you that you could possibly be. And so this period of time from January 2025 to now might have been a period of time in which you've been working out what you feel is you in your life versus getting rid of what doesn't feel like you anymore in your life. That could be old things that you have that have been taking up space in your home, or it could be old relationships or associations that you've outgrown, or it could be old ideas that you've had of yourself, old motivations, old values, old obligations. As you've sorted through these old things and put them, as I said, out by the curb in order to be picked up by either the garbage collector or maybe even a charity that's making the rounds and picking up the things that you no longer need. So right now with the North Node in your own sign, there's a feeling of I come first. And so your focus might very well have been on you since January of 2025, your welfare, your well-being. And this is something that Pisces has a bit of a mixed relationship with. On one hand, Pisces is often described as being very selfless and self-sacrificing. And so you're uncomfortable with the idea of putting yourself first or things being about you. But at the same time, Pisces is Jupiter ruled. So you definitely have things that you want and definitely have things that you like. So sometimes the self-denial that can work its way into the charts of someone who has Pisces rising or is born under the zodiac sign of Pisces Sometimes that self-denial can go against who you really are as a person, and that can cause great conflict. So, with this period of time of the North Node going through your chart, the emphasis has been on you recognizing yourself, enjoying yourself, and being who you are. And this has centered you. This has given you a very strong sense of purpose in your life and a very strong sense of being in your life. This isn't anything that you probably want to change or to go away. And you might have also experienced during this period of time things working out for you, accomplishing the things that you had set out to accomplish, you feeling fulfilled in certain aspirations or certain pursuits. This might be a period of time that you've really enjoyed yourself, certainly following on the heels of Saturn having just left your own zodiac sign. But what we're talking about today is Uranus at the bendings, which means that Uranus is forming a square between the North Node, where it resides in your own chart, and the South Node, where it is opposite your own zodiac sign. And you may feel with Uranus at the bendings that you are torn between these two places. One part of you has been very much enjoying the North Node traveling through your zodiac sign, but another part of you may also feel fearful that that's going to be taken away from you. And you may feel that once the nodes change signs, and they change signs on July 26th of this year, that it's back to being the sacrificing Pisces, that it's back to being the at everyone else's beck and call Pisces. And so there may be anxiety about holding on to this new sense of confidence and of self-ownership that you have. I think the great revolution with Uranus being at the bendings is going to be its great revelation. And its great revelation is you don't have to disappear again. These things don't have to go away. In other words, perhaps the purpose of the North Node traveling through your zodiac sign was to give you such a solid sense of yourself that it couldn't be lost again. In other words, this idea that you aren't lost, that you are very much found, that you are centered in who you are, and that it's not going to be lost moving forward. And this might give you the confidence of you being you as the North Node leaves your sign and goes into the zodiac sign of Aquarius, which is in, as I said, late July. This idea of you being who you are, that you're not going to lose who you are, is going to be supported by your ruling planet, Neptune, in the zodiac sign of Aries, which is also going to work in sextile with that idea of the North Node in Aquarius, because Aquarius and Aries understand each other by sextile. In any case, the focus may be off of you, but it's not going to leave you. And you may feel more of a balance returning to your different relationships and associations and partnerships. And you might really like this feeling of like, I'm not going to evaporate. I'm not going to disappear. And with that knowledge and with that confidence that you have, clearly you're going to engage in your relationships, your associations, your friendships very differently from the way that you engaged in them before. And I think it's going to be less about, it's my turn now and I get to make demands. And it's going to be more along the lines of, because you're comfortable with who you are, you're going to be more comfortable with who they are. And this might bring a wonderful process of rediscovery in some of your most intimate and beloved associations.